Training camp's here, baby. Let's eat. Locker room. Cody Stoots. Let's eat.
Locker room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize. Every angle's what we really do. We the source. We the pulse of the city too. Landlocked. Got the game in the headlock. Localize every time. Can't stop, won't stop. Yeah, we top 2 and we not too. Plugged in daily digital on YouTube.
All right, it's here, training camp. We are an hour and a half away from the start of training camp. Landry Locker, Cody Stoots with you here in the locker room. We got you covered. Digital Kings. Nick Caserio going to speak very shortly in an hour. Cody, we're going to get into all the position battles, but the Texans, this is one of the most anticipated seasons that I can remember. I don't know that there's ever been this much excitement, and I'm really excited. We'll get into all the position battles, but I don't know. You're pumped. We got everyone covered.
I would tell you that it's finally here, but it feels like we were just at NRG Stadium for the Browns playoff game. Like, it got here before we know it. I'm super excited for training camp. And you're right. The hype for this team is unmatched in Texans history. The closest thing was the 2012 Texans, but they didn't have a star quarterback or a budding star quarterback like C.J. Stroud. They had Matt Schaub. They had a unproven but exciting defense. Remember, J.J. Watt wasn't a defensive player.
Don't smack Schaub too much, though. Yeah. Don't disrespect him too much.
Well, I mean, coming off of the big injury, I didn't feel as good about him in 2012 as I do about C.J. Stroud here in 2024. So, it's a tough bar to clear, but, C.J. Stroud clears it, and it's going to be the most hyped season, and training camp is here, and we're going to cover it better than anybody.
So here's the thing. I'm going to go 30 minutes, and then I'm going to kick it to Stoots, and then Stoots is going to kick it to Nick Caserio on the Houston Texans YouTube channel. We got you covered. We are the local digital kings here on YouTube, and I'm just going to start. I'm going to throw out each position, and I'm going to talk about the craziest thing to look for when it comes to training camp. And I'm going to start with the most important position, quarterback. We feel good about C.J. Stroud. We feel good about where he's going, where he's heading. But the quarterback thing is the backup look for me. The backup, like, is Case Keenum going to be better than Davis Mills? I actually think, like we watched last season, I feel like Davis Mills was better than Case Keenum. I wonder if he could have won that game against the old Oilers in Tennessee. We saw the game against Cleveland where they put Davis Mills in, and he looked a lot better. The QB question for me, before we kick it off to your channel and lead up to Caserio, is the backup look. The backup position, the backup quarterback situation is going to be really interesting.
It's keeping both backups, and it's hoping that they never play, obviously. The Texans all season long last year told us that Davis Mills was the backup until he had to start a game, and then it was Case Keenum starting that game. And I would think that it's going to stay the same. Davis Mills will be the backup, and I would tell you that this time around, if he has to start, he's going to be the guy that starts in place.
I agree.
C.J. Stroud. Case Keenum's usefulness has not expired for this team. Like, he is still a useful part of this team. C.J. Stroud talked about him last year as the go-between between him and Bobby Slowick. When Stroud wanted to say something to Slowick that he didn't want to say directly, he'd tell Case, Case would tell Slowick, and it came easier to hear from a veteran than it did from a rookie. So Keenum still has usefulness to this team. I don't believe Tim Boyle's a factor. And Landry, I don't believe there's any chance. With where DeMeco Ryans coached before this and what the San Francisco 49ers went through, I don't believe there's any chance they're keeping just 2 quarterbacks.
No, I don't think so either. I actually think Case Keenum is being trained to be a coach. I think he's going to end up being a part of this coaching staff. I think that is, like, as we talk about Gerard Johnson, Bobby Slowick leaving, I think Case Keenum kind of gets elevated as his career goes on. Let's go to running back. Pearson down is the thing that I'm looking at. Joe Mixon, he's going to be your starting running back. Yep. We'll see how he looks as, like, Father Time can catch up to you quickly. But Dameon Pierce, last year this time, a lot of people thought, man, 900 yards, if he would only stayed healthy, like, he was this in the league in rushing. He was top 10, blah, blah, blah. Dameon Pierce was unplayable last year.
Yeah.
At the end of the season, he knows it. A lot of people know it. He's been very open and honest about the difficulty that he had of picking up this system, etc. And among other things, the running back position is going to be interesting. Dameon Pierce down. What is that going to look like?
It's got to be Dameon Pierce because I just don't love the situation if it's not Dameon Pierce. He has had a whole offseason to get right from a health as well as learn what he needs to learn to execute this offense the way that it needs to be executed. He has got to pay off on that because I do not love turning over running back 2 to a rookie in Jawar Jordan or an undrafted free agent rookie in British Brooks. And Dare Ogunbowale is on this roster specifically to be an occasional third down back and to be a special teams useful player. So he's not your backup running back. The options are short. They're giving Dameon Pierce the best chance to be running back 2. DeMeco Ryans.
And they're saying they love him. And they're saying they love him. And they're showing that they love him because they did not invest in the backup running back position.
Yep. It's very easy to see if Pierce can display some of his 2022 success, how he's running back 2, Jawar Jordan's on this team as running back 4, Dare Ogunbowale is running back 3 with special teams usefulness, and that's the pecking order behind Joe Mixon. Look, Mixon is a workhorse. He's been in the top 4 for carries a couple of times in the past few seasons, but he can't carry the ball every time, and they're going to have to grind teams out late in games once they get the lead with this offense that we expect to be a pretty darn good offense, and grinding those teams out will be using multiple running backs. Pierce has got to lock this down or they're in a lot of trouble.
Next position, fullback. We using it. Are we using the fullback? Andrew Beck last year, they used him a little bit in the fullback at the fullback position. There's a couple of other options this year. Are they going to use it? Are they going to use the H-back? Are they going to go 21 personnel? They're going to go 12 personnel. What are we doing here? Fullback, are we using it?
I believe they will use the fullback, and to me, it's between Beck and Troy Hairston. And if Troy Hairston can showcase enough, he's a cheaper option. Not that the Texans need to worry too much about money, but he's a guy that you could grow into the position for the next couple of seasons. I just don't see a Shanahan offense, shooting off that tree like Bobby Slowick is. I don't see them going without a fullback and having somebody that can help on special teams, because special teams' usefulness is kind of ratcheted up.
The D end in college. I mean, so he knows how to tackle, and the new kickoff rules. We've talked about that a lot. What is that going to look like? Is he that adds value?
If all of a sudden you could put Troy Hairston on kickoff return and kickoff coverage, and maybe Andrew Beck is only useful on kickoff return, then there's a slight advantage to Hairston. Look, we're talking about a small amount of snaps, but we're still talking about snaps that Bobby Slowick has a fullback out there. So I do believe they're going to use a fullback this year. And I would tell you, I like Hairston a little bit more than Beck.
Tight end. Schultz and who the F knows. And I say this just to say that I guess Tegan Quinteriano is going to be ready to go for camp. I guess Cade Stover is whatever you and I believe he is. Brevin Jordan, we like him, but he's not a really good blocker. The tight end situation is interesting because you got Dalton Schultz, and then you got a hell of a lot from 2 down of who the F knows.
I put up my 53-man roster projection on Houston football this morning. This was the easiest one for me to predict. It's Dalton Schultz, it's Brevin Jordan, and it's Cade Stover. Call it a day. Tegan Quinteriano's never stayed healthy. He hasn't played enough football. He is behind in learning this offense, executing this offense, and Cade Stover's draft pick slot basically guarantees that he's going to be on the team. We know Schultz is on the team. So it's Brevin Jordan versus Tegan Quinteriano. I just don't see how Jordan is going to lose that matchup with Tegan Quinteriano. Dalton Keene's not a factor. I know he's on the roster, kind of as a fullback, kind of as a tight end. He's not a factor. To me, it's Schultz, it's Brevin Jordan, and it's Cade Stover. And you hope that Dalton and Brevin Jordan aren't asked to block as much because maybe the offensive line is going to be a little bit healthier.
Yeah, the thing is interesting for me because I think anytime Quinteriano's been out there, he's kind of stuck out. And that's kind of been a bit for me where I'm like, Tegan Quinteriano, he's the dude. But, I mean, when he's been out there, he's balled out. It's been very, very rare and it hasn't been that often. And they've invested, and Brevin Jordan's taken he's taken advantage of his opportunities. Yep. And you have Cade Stover, who has a relationship with Stroud. Like, you look at the picture of everyone working out. I didn't see Quitoriano there. I saw Stover, and I saw Schultz. I didn't see him there, but so it's kind of a weird situation with Quitoriano. I don't know how he fits in or anything like that. So I kind of agree with you, but it is interesting to see how that whole thing plays out. Wide receiver position, the top 3 and the rest TBD. And this was my thing. I was talking about this with you at the media party yesterday. And my thing is this. I think the days of like the number 5 wide receiver that doesn't play special teams are done. So a lot of people are really high on John Mechie, and it's like, oh, we like John Mechie. We got to figure out what he's got to do. If he can't cover kicks or he can't return kicks, like, what exactly is John Mechie doing? So this wide receiver room, when you look at it, like, is Robert Woods going to be here? Is Noah Brown actually going to remain? Like, and there's a lot of other guys, like from Steven Sims down, that can do a lot of multiple things. John Mechie's kind of fighting an uphill battle here with the new age of the NFL and the new day of the NFL and the new kick return rules and the way that you're going to handle rosters and the way you're going to handle special teams and stuff. So the top 3 wide receivers, we know who they are, and they don't need to play special teams, but from 3 down, that's going to be interesting to watch once we start watching the special teams and everything.
The biggest thing about Mechie is when he's a wide receiver, when he's out there and he's playing wide receiver, he's got to be really good if he's going to make this team. Because if Mechie makes the team, him not playing special teams isn't going to screw him. It's going to screw somebody else out of their position. And then the Texans will maybe keep somebody who's more special teams inclined in that 6th spot versus somebody that maybe has a little bit more wide receiver potential. Now, if I was John Mechie, I'd find a way to get myself on the field for a couple of special teams reps to help add to my case, but he's not been good when he's tried to return punts or return kicks, so I don't see it that way, and I don't know if he's ever really played special teams. I can't imagine he was doing a lot of it at Bama in his final year there, so that's a tough uphill battle. I could see if Mechie makes the team, then a super special teams guy like, say, Ben Skoranek also makes the team to make up for the fact that Mechie has a lessened special teams presence.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see because the kick return battle is going to be wild. You're going to see Sims, you're going to see Damian Pierce, you're probably going to see a little bit of Hutchinson, Robert Desmond Woods. King. I would think is going to be gonna want a shot at that. Like, it's going to be wild to see all these guys who want to return kicks. I'm not sleeping on Desmond King being like surprisingly good at this either. Sure. Like, sure. And just completely throwing like a complete like curveball at everything.
Jamar Jordan has kickoff return experience at Louisville, the running back. And then look, this is one example in minicamp from the spring, but Stephon Diggs caught a kickoff and ran it back. Joe Mixon caught a kickoff and ran it back. We know Tank Dell's been dynamic on special teams before in his football career. There's a lot of options. That's going to be maybe.
We ain't putting Joe Mixon back there, brother.
I'm just telling you what happened in minicamp. I'm just telling you what I observed with my eyes at minicamp. He ran back a kickoff.
Was it like a desperation type of thing, or what were we doing here?
They lined it up just like they did every other kickoff in the special teams period, and Joe Mixon ran it back. So, I mean, look,
did he run it back, or they weren't even tackling?
I mean, it was minicamp, so you can't tackle. So, yeah. I mean, I'm just telling you what happened. I don't think it's crazy that some team is going to try one of their guys. Remember when Will Fuller would?
Tyreek Hill will be back there a couple times for the Dolphins.
Yeah,
I promise. You. I promise you.
Like it's. I go back to when Will Fuller would randomly return a punt for the Texans every now and then. Like, I'm not saying every time Joe Mixon or somebody's going to be back there that's more prevalent in the offense, but it's going to be the ability to change and adjust and scare your opponent with the special teams change.
All right, next piece of WTF here. In the locker room, passing it off to Cody Stoots at 8:00, and then we're going to pass it off to Nick Caserio. Appreciate everyone for coming through training camp. We got you covered through and through. Live stream 12:30 today, so be on the lookout for that. Offensive line, interior movement, and rich tackles. The tackles are highly paid. Laramie Tunsil, second highest paid left tackle in the NFL. Titus Howard, top 5 highest paid right tackles. And then in the interior, when it comes to this offensive line, like there is a hell of a lot to look at there. What the hell are we looking at with this offensive line? It's a lot. There's reason for optimism, and I think a lot of it is it couldn't be much worse. Tell me if you've heard that before as a Texans fan or media type. But I don't look at this offensive line with overlying optimism like a lot of people do. I'm not feeling it like that, Stoots.
I'm pretty optimistic about this offensive line, assuming health. If Laramie Tunsil and Titus Howard, which is one of the 3 most expensive tackle duos in all of football, if they're able to play week 1 and play the majority of the season, I feel great about the tackle situation. Shaq Mason was one of the 20 or so best guards in football last year, according to Pro Football Focus. And then you got to figure out the center and the left guard spot. They drafted Juice Scruggs to play center for this team last year. He was going to start as a rookie at center last year without spending the majority of training camp as the starter, because ultimately they started with Quessenberry, and then he got hurt. They turned it over to Scruggs. Scruggs got hurt at the end of the preseason. I believe Scruggs is going to be the starter at center. Then it's the free-for-all at left guard. Who knows? It's Kenyon Green. It's Kendrick Green. It's Jarrett Patterson. It's Nick Broker. Like, there's a lot of different options. They've got to figure out who the depth pieces are at every spot along the offensive line. It's pretty easy if Patterson doesn't start at center. He's the backup center. But Blake Fisher, do you want to see him week 1 if Tunsil or Howard can't go? You want to see Charlie Heck out there week 1? There's no George Fant on this team. Fant was a surprisingly fun signing for this team a year ago. There's no Fant this time around.
Yeah, and I don't feel as good about this offensive line as you do. I feel like it's almost like, oh well, it can't get much worse. I feel like it could be okay. I don't feel like it's going to be terrible, but I'm not like overly optimistic about this offensive line at all.
I just believe if they only have one competition spot, if they know it's Scruggs and Mason and Howard and Tunsil, and that left guard spot's the only one that they've got to figure out who the guy is, they could build some cohesiveness throughout training camp and be ready to go. And if they just get to, slightly above average, that's a vast improvement over what they did consistently last year.
Yeah, so we've gone through the offense, the wide receivers, the quarterback, who cares? Wide receiver, we're going 3 through 6 down, tight end, 2 down, kind of interesting. And then offensive line, optimism from Cody, pessimism from me. But I mean, I don't think it can be as bad as it was last year, but we'll see. Let's go to the defensive side of things. And I'm going to combine the D-line. I think the edge combination, and we don't predict injuries here unless they're necessarily to predict, like when we get to Stingley and stuff. Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson, I feel really good about the edge. The D-line, I feel like there's pessimism and I feel like there's like concern, but for me, like from what I've heard from D'Amico Ryans, from what the actions have been, I'm not concerned about the D-line as much. I actually feel really, really good about the interior, the D tackles, just based on what D'Amico Ryans has said, based on what some people have said about potential freelancing by Malik Collins and Jonathan Grenard. I actually feel really good about this D-line. Tell me if I'm wrong.
This might be the best chance that D'Amico Ryans has had as the play caller on defense for the Texans to execute exactly how he wants to execute on defense with the defensive line. I love the top 3 defensive ends with Daniil Hunter, Will Anderson, and Danico Autry. Autry can obviously bump inside, play a little tackle for you. I'd assume Derek Barnett has the inside track to be the 4th defensive end. He played well last year. And then I trust that D'Amico Ryans and Nick Caserio can find 4 or 5 guys out of this group of defensive tackles that they have and figure out what they need and maybe just mix and match the situations that they need from a defensive tackle. Hey, you need a bunch of run stopping? Okay, well, there's Fatukasi and Settle. Hey, you need a little bit more pass rush? Well, maybe we're going to slide Khalil Davis in there. Like mixing and matching based on what they expect the opposing team to do. That's what I feel like they're going to do with the defensive tackle spot.
Yeah, I feel good about it, and maybe like a little bit more than I should, but I just feel good about it. Let's go to the linebackers though, and I just simply put, what's up? Like Al-Shaair, they seem to love him. You seem to be confident that he's an upgrade over Blake Cashman, which is cool, and I think that at camp we'll actually get like a decent grasp of what he's about, because last year at training camp, like if you watched, it was clear that Blake Cashman was going to be one of the better linebackers on this team. Like if you actually had your eyes open and you were watching, like it was like, man, this dude's cold. He might start. He's definitely on the team. Like it was very clear. Between Al-Shaair, we know Christian Harris is going to be there. The linebacker position, like the depth, I feel like among like the hipsters that follow you and me, that are like big Texans fans, they kind of get a little bit concerned about the linebackers. How do you feel about the linebacker depth? Because I feel like it's going to be something that D'Amico takes on. But I also think it's something that at camp we'll have a decent idea about. It won't like catch us by surprise in the season.
The depth is a big question mark for me. I like the two starters. They're going to play primarily two linebackers. It's going to be Harris and Al-Shaair, and that's going to be a really solid duo. But after that, your guess is as good as mine. Henry To'o has a physical limitation, but you seem to like what he can bring to the table between his ears. Jake Hanson's been with this team a couple years.
I like Hanson on special teams.
We've been trying to cut Jake Hanson for 2 years. We didn't think he was going to make it as an undrafted free agent. We didn't believe he's going to make it last year, but tried to cut Jake Hanson for a couple of years.
Well, you don't like white linebackers. Let's be honest.
Well, that's not true. Max Tooley's my favorite undrafted free agent.
What'd you say when Cushing got drafted?
Yeah, that's a long time ago. That has nothing to do with his skin color. I just preferred a wide receiver at that point. This is where I feel like they're going to use some roster spots as a guy that can help a little bit on defense, but is there for special teams. So that's Neville Hewitt. That's Delshon Phillips. Maybe Jamal Hill, the safety turned linebacker from Oregon that they drafted. Those would be the three guys that I'd look at from a depth standpoint. I don't know that I love the fact that they might get on the field, but I like the top two linebackers enough.
Yeah, the Hill thing is interesting. I don't know where he fits in. I know that he has the safety experience and all that and whatever. Like maybe he can find his way on special teams. So that will be interesting. It really is going to be interesting to see the balance between special teams and linebacking. And if like there's like a give or take where it's like this guy's really good at covering kicks and then you're keeping him on the roster here. Like it's really crazy because kick coverage is, I mean, it's way different than it's been in a while. So it's just like a complete different factor when it comes to roster building, et cetera. Let's go to the cornerbacks. We're going to pass it off to Stoots. Stoots going to take over at 8 a.m. 8:30, Nick Caserio going to speak. It is a locker room. Cody Stoots, the Digital Kings here in Houston. Cornerback is interesting. Stingley and is the question. Like, what are we looking at here? We feel okay about Stingley when he's on the field. It almost feels like the end of last season kind of has us all feeling really, really good about him. But what else are we going to get from the cornerback position? Because this is one of the big question marks.
Oh, I feel great about Derek Stingley if he's on the field. I just don't feel great about him staying healthy. 4 straight football seasons, 2 in college, 2 in the pros. He's had injuries significantly affect his season. There's no reason to believe he's going to be fully healthy this season. And when he's not on the field, if he's hurt, they're in a lot of trouble because that's either a rookie in Kamari Lassiter or that's going to be C.J. Henderson, who's been a disappointment in his NFL career to this point, filling in for Stingley, or maybe it's Jeff Okudah filling in for Derek Stingley. Like, there's not a lot of good options behind Derek Stingley. We know Desmond King is likely the guy to lock down the slot cornerback spot.
Is he?
Well, I don't know that anybody else is going to beat him out. I mean, they may have to play Lassiter outside, so that keeps King at the slot cornerback spot.
I mean, they've shown that they're willing to cut King. I mean, they did it last year.
Sure. But they've also been willing to put Lassiter on the field. And again, it's mini camp with the first team opposite Derek Stingley. And if he plays well enough, start him outside. I know there's concerns about having a rookie out there, but if this pass rush is as good as we expect it to be, you can maybe mitigate some of the growing pains that Kamari Lassiter is going to have. I don't love Henderson, and I don't love Jeff Okudah. And past those two guys, there's not a lot of options there either. So it gets real dicey if they can't figure out who the guy is opposite Sting, and it gets very scary if Derek Stingley's not on the field.
The interesting thing about the whole cornerback situation is that the thing that you feel most good about, there's like a large sample size of reason to not feel good about with Derek Stingley. And we got a really good taste of how elite it is, like when he's on there, but it's when he's not on the field consistently enough. So it's kind of a tough situation. That's definitely, like, when it comes to something to look at, that the cornerback position is crazy. What about behind the cornerback position? Passing this off to Stoots in 4 minutes. Nick Caserio speaking in 34. Safety. We got Jimmy Ward. We got Jalen Petrie. I get, like, Jimmy Ward when he's on the field, I know that he's going to be a good player. Jalen Petrie, we saw a good rookie season, and then we saw a complete fall off, regardless of what the mouthpieces want to say, a complete fall off in year two. How are we feeling at the safety position? And in fairness, the depth took a big hit with Eric Murray and Stewart getting hurt, like in the same game. So the depth kind of took a little bit of a hit, but this is kind of an awkward position because you feel okay about Jimmy, although year to year at that age, you don't know what you're going to get. And then Jalen Petrie, year to year, couldn't be any more of a contradiction from year one to year two.
Petrie's got to play within the system. He's got to be, you talked about the freelancing from Malik Collins. Petrie has to do exactly what is assigned to him in the defense, and using him in 3 safety sets where they can put Jimmy Ward and Eric Murray there, and then kind of use Petrie, have him creeping up to the line, maybe darting in there with some of the tackle for loss success he had as a rookie. That's where they can maybe have a lot of success with him. If they stay healthy, I like the depth, because you mentioned MJ Stewart, you mentioned Eric Murray. Kalen Bullock's absolutely going to be on this team. Nick Caserio seemed to really like him. They considered taking him in the second, ultimately got him in the third. He probably has some growing.
Threw a damn party when they drafted him. Good Lord.
Yeah, he probably has some growing to do before you really would rely on him. But inevitably,
look like me after a Texas dub.
Look, inevitably Murray is going to have to play, or MJ Stewart's going to have to play, or even Bullock's going to have to play, because Jimmy Ward he has not stayed healthy on a consistent enough basis. And Jalen Petrie's got to be much better than he was last year.
Has to. You heard D'Amico shout him out and then figure that out. And then we go to special teams. We've gone through offense, defense, special teams. Wild as hell. What are we going to get there? And when it comes to special teams, who's going to return kicks? Is it going to be Dameon Pierce? Is it going to be Steven Sims? I heard someone threw out Hutchinson's, like someone pretty close to the situation threw out Hutchinson as like a possibility to try to make this team. Like, there's going to be guys like foaming at the mouth trying to make teams just doing this. Like, there's going to be, the craziest thing is, like, these wide receivers that we see that like are kind of fringe guys, they're going to like invest their lives in trying to like master the art of returning these kicks. So it's going to be wild, Stoots. Before I pass it off to you, and before we get into Caserio, it's going to be wild. Special teams is going to be insane.
I'm more interested in the guys covering the kicks than returning the kicks, because somebody's going to make the team because they cover the kicks better than anybody else.
Yeah, it's going to be wild. It is a locker room number one source, maybe number 1A source for Texans digital content. Training camp is very, very close. We are an hour. We're an hour away, an hour and 30 minutes or 30 seconds away. Going to pass this off to Cody Stoots. Go to Cody Stoots' channel and join him and me. And then we'll pass it off to Nick Caserio. And always remember, when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together. The season is upon us, baby. Let's eat.
Got taste for days, opinions to give, we got takeaways. If it's up, then it's up, we number one. You don't need to try your luck. Locker room, yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk, yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize.